So we'll call the meeting, or call to order the meeting of the Improvement Service Committee for Wednesday, April 29th, 2020. Roll call: Alder Gerlach, Alder Scannell. I see Alder Scannell, I just don't hear him.
That's not a bad thing. Unmute, Randy. Unmute.
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 Alder Gerlach needs to unmute as well.
I think she
I am
just
unmuted. I just wasn't here. I needed to take a break.
Okay. Alder
I am here
Weary.
now.
Alder Weary. And
Yes.
Alder Burnett.
Present.
Okay. Election of chair.
I move to nominate Alder Weary for chair.
Oh,
Are there any other nominations? Excuse me?
we don't need a second, right?
No.
Correct. If Alderman Weary accepts that nomination, that automatically becomes the second.
Okay.
So are there any other nominations from the floor? If not, you have the ability to cast unanimous ballot, or we can do roll call vote.
Unanimous ballot.
Unanimous consent?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
With no objection, then, congratulations, Alder Weary. You are the chair of the Improvement Service Committee, and you may take the meeting from here, sir.
Thank you, Steve. Well done. Next is the election of the vice chair. Can I have a nomination?
I nominate Alder Scannell if he'd like to take the responsibility.
I accept the responsibility.
All right, I have a nomination for Alder Scannell. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All right. Those in favor of Alder Scannell being the vice chair?
Aye.
Aye.
Say it. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And on to the approval of the minutes. First, I wanted to welcome, I didn't mention it last time, but Lynn, Alder Gerlach, right? I want to say that right every time.
Very good, thank you.
Gerlach, okay. Because it looks like you almost want to say Gerlach.
Yeah.
No, please don't.
Okay. Approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Scannell, second by Burnett to approve the agenda. Any discussion or changes? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. E, approval of the minutes.
So
What are your
moved.
wishes?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Scannell, second by Burnett to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? That carried. Regular business. One. At least everybody writes nice short ones. Way to go, Jesse. Consideration with possible action on request by Alder Burnett to amend and update the stormwater utility ordinance to include and explain the impact trees have on stormwater retention and drainage, and to provide a dollar credit to property owners who have trees planted or growing on their property in order to be consistent and fair with what the majority of the Common Council passed in November 2019. If the ordinance and equivalent residential unit calculations are not adjusted appropriately, then forestry expenses should no longer be paid for by stormwater utility rates effective January 2021. Alderman Burnett.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Weary. I don't really want to rehash history with the budget, but one thing that I didn't feel comfortable with at the time was the move of forestry expenses to the stormwater utility rates. I mean, that vote was that vote, but what I was concerned about was to be consistent what the authority the Improvement and Service Committee has on stormwater policy and the ordinance. That should have appeared before the committee before it was voted on in that manner. So my motion, or my agenda item is so that our staff, Mr. Grenier and his staff, look to amend the stormwater utility ordinance. Director Grenier, the latest one that I could find on our website was amended December 2016. Is that the most recent one that has been amended?
I would actually have to defer to law to find that out. I'm not sure. They are the ones who keep the updates for the ordinance.
That's fine. And so what I'd say is that I reviewed the ordinance yet again. I did it twice on the time of the budget, and I did it again today. And the word trees doesn't appear a single time in that entire ordinance. So again, I've read literature that supports that trees absorb stormwater, not disputing that fact. But if that was the basis for moving that expense to the utility, we need to update the ordinance so that it's fair. And it really should come through this committee for a real good discussion. The second part of that is, in my district specifically, have a whole lot of trees people have planted. It's a very wooded area. And so if we're going to, in a way, penalize, that might not be the right word, but for property owners that have a lot of impervious area, roof lines, driveways, sidewalks, anything with a surface that does not absorb water, if that helps determine the amount of money they pay to the stormwater bill, then if trees absorb stormwater, we need to develop, consistent with the ordinance that I'm proposing, we need to be able to say that to those homeowners that have trees, they should get a credit on their stormwater bill. You can't have it both ways. We can't say trees absorb stormwater, but then not give people a credit for the trees that they have on their property. So that's the basis for this. This hasn't really sat well with me for the last few months. And I just think as a committee, we really need to discuss this and amend the ordinance for sake of transparency. So that's my soapbox. I'll jump off for the moment. Here, if Director Grenier wants to respond to that or has questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you, Alderman. Director Grenier?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the way the ordinance is written, the ERU is it's not an equivalent residential, it's an equivalent runoff unit. So what we're measuring is impervious areas. So any area that has the ability to absorb stormwater, be it grass or tree, if it's a vegetated area, there's no charge to the property owner for that. So let's say you have a residential lot that's all planted in grass or all planted in trees. The way the ordinance addresses that is you don't get charged a stormwater fee for that because there's no impervious area. The more impervious area that you have on the parcel, the more ERUs you have and the more in stormwater you charge. The reason that trees aren't included in the ordinance is because it's inherently a credit or a no dollar charge under the ordinance as it sits. 3 credits that are provided to ERUs. The utility can provide credits for an ERU determination for non-residential properties if they're discharging stormwater directly to the waters of Green Bay, the Fox River, or the East River. They will get a 2/3 ERU for any doing a direct discharge not flowing through the city system. A 10% credit in the number of ERUs for properties that provide privately constructed and maintained detention or retention facilities. And there is also a 10% credit in the number of ERUs for residential multi-family condominiums that also provide privately constructed and maintained detention facilities. The reason that there's not a 100% credit if they have their own treatment is the ERUs also pay not only for the treatment system, but also for the collection system, which is the storm sewer itself, not just the pond. They are, those types of, those 3 credit areas are still utilizing the storm sewer system, whereas anybody who directly discharges, so I don't know if they do or not, but let's take, for instance, Lights Memorial Park. If somebody were to develop at Light Park into a commercial enterprise of some sort, and they had a discharge directly into the river, they would be permitted directly by the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. They wouldn't use our storm sewer system and they wouldn't use any of our treatment system. Therefore, they would get a credit on that. So that was the first one that we talked about with the direct discharge. So again, the way the ordinance is written, grassed areas and tree areas automatically have a zero charge. The only people who are being charged are the ones who have impervious surfaces, and the amount of impervious surface determines the number of ERUs that are being charged.
All right. Any questions for the director? Alder Burnett, any other?
Chairman Weary, I think, I'm frustrated. First of all, thank you, Director Grenier. You explained things well as usual. But for me, the frustration is this cognitive dissonance, if you will. On the one hand, we say that trees absorb stormwater, so therefore we should have the forestry department paid for by this utility. But that's a rather large shift to stormwater utility bills, 1.2 million roughly. My whole point of saying this is that really, I'm not, the credit to homeowners who have trees, that's part of it, but the overriding concern I have is the Improvement and Service Committee should really be voting on an updated ordinance that speaks of trees. If we're going to add $1.2 million of expense yearly, the ordinance should be rewritten to reflect that additional cost. So that's my main concern. The secondary part of that, the trees and the credits, we can have that discussion. My point is, if you look in the ordinance, the Improvement and Service Committee with the director, Mr. Grenier, we have the authority on stormwater utility. So we should have voted on this at a committee level at the budget rather than having it part of a budget item. So those are my comments. I'll make a motion when the time is appropriate. But thank you for the explanation, Mr. Grenier.
Thank you, Alder Burnett. Any other committee members? Anybody else attending the meeting who wanted to comment on this? All right. Well, Alder Burnett, do you have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to refer to staff to begin the process of updating and amending the stormwater management ordinance and report back to this committee by July. That gives enough time to start the process.
Motion by Alder Burnett to refer to staff to update the applicable ordinance and bring it back by July. Is there a second to that?
Question by me for Alder Burnett?
Yes. Sure. Go ahead, Alder Scannell.
I'm not exactly sure what specifically you want. I mean, given Director Grenier's response, I'm not sure what exactly are you looking for in the update.
We need to thank you. We need to explain trees, how it absorbs stormwater. To read the ordinance, there's a lot of technical jargon that you need a degree like Mr. Grenier's to understand. My point is that to the public, if we're going to say that trees absorb stormwater and that helps with the flow and the prevention of toxins going to our bays and rivers and whatnot, that really should be reflected here. And after reviewing it 3 times, trees aren't mentioned a single time. So it's just, I'm not looking to, not looking for anything other than to have a policy that's more reflective of the effect trees have on stormwater. And right now that, quite honestly, you would really have to make a stretch to say that that's in that ordinance. The word forest is mentioned twice, forestry. Vegetation's mentioned a handful of times, but seriously, the word tree is not mentioned a single time. So I'm not looking to micromanage what Director Grenier would do, but we really should have some language. Because when I was researching this around budget time, I saw the arguments made about trees and affecting water. Director Ditchite mentioned that several times at budget. That should be part of that ordinance. So that's all.
All right, well, we do have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second Alder Grenier. I mean, that makes sense to you, Director Grenier?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Director Grenier?
Yes, we can work with law to implement the language that Alder Burnett is requesting.
I have a question.
All right. Sure, Alder Gerlach.
And I'm not trying to be challenging or anything. I'm just trying to understand this. Alder Burnett, what is the ultimate goal that behind this? Are you trying to encourage people to plant more trees, or are you trying to budget differently and not have the forestry part of the stormwater budget? I just don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I'm not going to lie, I voted against the budget. I voted against it at budget time. So I have a disagreement with it. That's not really the issue here. The issue is here that if we're going to say that trees absorb stormwater, that change should have been made at improvement in services. So it really is to update the ordinance to the correct manner in which it should be, and to come through this body. So then we can have that discussion. What Director Grenier just mentioned a few minutes ago, that's a discussion we should have here. Okay, trees affect it, the girth of the trees, if people have forested areas. At any rate, we should be looking at that ordinance. It's been 3.5 years. I think, a good review would be necessary. So I'm not really looking to revisit the budget, although I don't agree with it. To me, that's secondary. The main thing is this committee is in charge of the stormwater utility system. We should have that debate here. So.
Alder Burnett?
Yes.
Would it be fair to summarize that the current ordinance talks about the impervious areas and is silent, relatively silent, on the pervious areas, and your desire is, if we're going to fund these areas using stormwater money, the ordinance should at least address that?
You summarized what I couldn't in 15 minutes, so thank you. That's perfect. I agree, that's perfect.
Thank you. Now I understand.
Okay. Anything else from the committee? Anybody else attending? All right, we have a motion by Burnett, second by Scannell. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And Steve, you got the motion? Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Number 2, consideration with possible action on request by Alderman Galvin that the current process for funding sidewalk repairs contracted by this city for residents be studied with the possibility of making changes. I see him there. Alderman Galvin.
Thank you, Chair. This comes out of, I hope you're all aware that starting this summer, there is a new policy for sidewalk repair. But what I'm talking about just pertains to this year. And currently this year, for sidewalk repair, if someone complains about a sidewalk, the city goes out and examines that particular piece of sidewalk, determine if it needs to be replaced or not based on the Federal Disability Act, which means it's not just broken, but it could have a divot in it or anything that might trip up a citizen with a walker or anything else like that. But what the city does, mainly, you've got 3 types of sidewalks that need to be repaired, or who has responsibility. One is the city for damage caused usually by trees on the terrace. And then also the ramps at the corners is the city's responsibility. Any other damaged sidewalk is the responsibility of the property owner. Now what's happened, especially in my district, and I think in some of the more near east and near west side districts, is that the city's had a policy that until someone complains, they don't do anything about it because they're not aware of it, they're not liable, so they don't need to take action. And neighbors have been hesitant to call and complain because to have a sidewalk that's been heaved by a tree means all their sidewalk is now under scrutiny, and it can cost a considerable amount of money for them to replace it. And so I've got a lot of neighbors that have been complaining about tree heaved sidewalks. I've got one lady, she's 94 years old. She's owned the house since the 50s. They came out and they marked 26 sections of her sidewalk to be replaced. And I believe the current rate is about $170 a section if it's done by replacing the cement. And she's concerned, her family's concerned. It's quite a financial strain on someone who's living on a Social Security check. The city does offer the possibility that people can pay for it to the city. The city will do the work and you pay them back over, Steve, I think it's 4 years.
I believe it's 5.
5 years, but with interest. And I've got people now calling me also, besides this elderly person, people who have been furloughed from their jobs, laid off from their jobs due to the COVID issue. And I talked to Steve about this, and Steve's been working. I mean, we've traded a lot of phone calls on sidewalks, probably more so than streets, actually. But I've been talking to Steve about this, and he's hesitant to not do the work because the longer we put it off, the worse it gets. The more people, if you work if you've ever been on the finance committee, you've seen the amount of people that put in claims to the city for tripping on sidewalks and becoming injured and things like that. I've tripped and fallen. My wife has tripped and fallen. Luckily, we haven't had any injuries other than our dignity. You know, it's a concern. It's a concern to me that I don't necessarily want to put off either, because again, I have elderly, I have people walking their children. I have children walking in the streets because the sidewalks are in such bad shape. And this is year round. You know, I mean, even during the winter time, the ice, snow melts, and because the sidewalks aren't where they're supposed to be, you get puddles, they freeze, they're ice, people are walking, they're tripping. Some of these sections as much as 6 inches. So I thought maybe as a incentive for people to continue, or at least ease the pain of having the work done, that the city offer them that 5-year loan interest-free. That's what I'm asking this committee. I'm not sure what the cost would be, to be honest with you, because I have found out from working with Steve that city employees who understand the sidewalk needs will come out, meet with the homeowner, and sometimes a section of sidewalk can be repaired merely by putting some caulk or pound into these divots or these cracks to make them smooth, which means no one has to replace any cement. Or you can actually have mud jacking done, which is still far less expensive. But the city does offer 2 options, and the first one I really like is if you are going to have the work done, the city will do it, and they get a low bid. And I did some sidewalk in front of my house a few years back, and I wanted it done now. And I paid more to have it done because those contractors will charge you as an individual more than they will charge the city. So that's one break they get, is that if the city does it, it's less, and it's a considerable amount of money. But what I'm asking is, as something to incentivize these people to get this work done and not put it off, is that we offer them that loan of money interest-free over a 5-year period. I think that would be more palatable to homeowners to get the work done and get it done now. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Let's see. Director Grenier, any comments on that before the committee? Just
one. And those of you who've served on INS have probably heard this multiple times when we set the assessment rates every year. The reason that we set that there's an interest rate is the city's actually borrowing money. So it's the bond rate that we're borrowing the money at plus 2% to count for the administrative costs to track and send those bills out to the property owners over the next 4 years. So just, not that I'm one way or the other on it, I just want to give you the backstory as to why the interest payment is charged to those property owners when they finance through the city. It's the bond rate that we borrowed the money at plus 2% for admin.
And Steve, has the decision been made where are you starting in the city? Like what part of the city? And
I don't know that we've come to that conclusion, but I've been working with, when we went to remote operations, my GIS individual is not at City Hall, so corresponding with him is a little challenging. And quite frankly, since we started working remote, things have been kind of crazy here for me. So I've taken that program and put it down into the hands of the sidewalk folks to give me a recommendation back. They have come up with 15 zones on either side of the river, but we haven't necessarily decided what zone we're going to start in. And it may be something like a random number generator of 1 through 15 so that everybody's got an equal shot at it.
Okay.
Just Anecdotally, I think it is related to this conversation. One of the things we are a little concerned with is, depending on how long this pandemic continues and with the social distancing, we may not be able, I don't know if we're going to be allowed to hire summer students. And if we're not allowed to hire summer students, that may jeopardize our ability to do that forward-looking program. Not so, they're going to be in the field, but they need to be trained. And in order to be trained, they've got to be with somebody. So we're still kind of trying to figure that out.
All right. Thank you, Director.
Chris, if I could just throw in one more comment.
Sure. Go ahead, Alder Galvin.
And this somewhat relates to the wheel tax. When the wheel tax was being thought of, I did have a discussion with the mayor at the time, and I don't remember if I had a discussion with Steve, that some of that wheel tax money, either some of it as is, or we added more onto the wheel tax, could have gone towards sidewalk replacement. And it was decided that getting the wheel tax through was going to be difficult, and throwing sidewalks into it would make it even more difficult. So I was able to look, better some than none at all, as far as the wheel tax went. And so that took a lot of pressure off of DPW having projects get put on the shelf because residents didn't want it and things like that. And that's why I thought maybe this interest-free program would be kind of an incentive, somewhat like the wheel tax. All the citizens would then be sharing in the cost of replacing these sidewalks to an extent. But I'm just throwing that in there. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Committee, any questions? Alder Burnett, I see your hand up.
Yeah,
Alder Scannell.
Yeah, it's a very interesting idea. I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of sidewalks in my district. I love them, but I don't want to require constituents out here to pay the cost. So sidewalks are sort of that thing that create a very healthy, livable, walkable community. And because a lot of the folks who have sidewalks, typically in Alder Galvin's neighborhood and some of the more center city areas, Alder Weary, when I lived in your district, as you know, tons of sidewalks, and a lot of them are in disrepair. And so that's perhaps not the city's fault, it's just the cost. And when a homeowner needs to do it, they don't always have the resources to do it. So you have a situation where a public good is enhanced, better sidewalks, paid for by the property owner, but the public benefits from that when you take a walk up and down the streets. So I'd be inclined to wonder how much such an interest program would cost. If it's $15,000, $20,000 a year, who knows what that cost would be? We need staff to look into it. But I think that's a worthwhile cost for the majority of the taxpayers to pay if it means that a sidewalk gets replaced, paid mostly by the property owner, an interest-free loan. They're making the payment over 5 years. So, I'll make a motion when the time is appropriate, but I think it's worth looking into. We would need the cost before we could make a policy decision on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alder Burnett. Alder Scannell, you had your hand up? Just need to unmute there, Alder Scannell.
Yep, thank you. My question is would that cost be spread out, or would one department get hit with it, or a couple of departments?
It's not a departmental charge. It becomes part of your debt service.
Okay. I figured, but I wanted to make sure that there wouldn't be any department that'd be hit with this. I think
no. It simply gets rolled into the debt service. You would be collecting less in revenue each year than what you did before. Although we don't have solid dollar figures, looking back, I don't have this year's assessment rates in front of me right now. But in 2019, the interest on unpaid assessments was 4.5. In 2018, it was 4.75%. So, Jim, do you remember, was it somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 this year? Didn't the rates go up?
For the
unpaid assessment interest rate.
477, I think it is.
Okay, 477. So we're still under 5%. So I don't know, because we're billing that back, I don't have the numbers that we bill back, but even if we go conservative and assume that the interest rate's 5%, and there's $500,000 worth of sidewalk that folks want to finance out that way. That would be an extra $25,000 on $500,000 worth of borrowing.
Okay, and you mentioned also like a 2% for all the notices. Does that come out of any particular department?
That's all rolled into that same.
Okay.
The assistant director tells me that his recollection of the interest rate on unpaid assessments for 2020 is 4.77%. That means that the bond issue is expected to come in at a 2.77% rate, and then they add 2% for admin on top of that.
All right, thank you, Alder Scannell. Alderman Stoyer, see your hand up there. Just need to
unmute. I'm unmuted. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate Alder Galvin bringing this forward, because this has been something that in my 8 years on council has been an issue. And I think one of the biggest complaints I get is somebody says, well, I've got like 7 or 8 or 10 squares, cakes that I have to, 3 have to be replaced by the city and the other 7 by me. They don't look that bad. Maybe some of them are, some aren't. But the question, they'll say, well, look at across the street. And then I'll walk across the street with them and I'll see 7 or 8 that are really terrible. And it's kind of like, so I think as far as getting consistency, as far as what the process is, I'm happy that we're putting together, some kind of a document that we could all look at. But roads is a big thing, but I think sidewalks is a very big thing as well. Let's see. I think that idea about the sidewalk zones, like a map or something that we could look at so that we could get a handle on what areas are going to be done. There are many citizens that will not complain because they're afraid that if they do complain, that they will be socked with extra costs. So I don't know how you get around that. I've got 3 or 4 folks that have called already, and Director Grenier, I'll be emailing that to you tomorrow as far as, what we have to do. And I think citizens just need to know, okay, it's a cost of doing business. You are a citizen, and there are costs that you have to deal with. I understand that. But, I think the complaint-driven thing is one issue, and citizens just want to know, well, why me? But sometimes I tell them that's just the cost of doing business. So just a couple of points, and I just hope we can keep that in the discussion. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Alderman Sawyer. Anyone else? Any questions or comments, or I'll entertain a motion?
Looks like Alder Johnson is trying to comment.
I see there's 2 Alder Johnsons here. Brian Johnson, Johnson. Brian Johnson 1.
Camera. Thank you, Chairman. Alder Galvin, it sounds like you're indicating that you have several constituents that have already contacted you. But what I'm hearing from Director Grenier is that we have not yet begun this process. So am I not understanding something here, or are those constituent concerns unrelated to the proactive sidewalk inspections? I am.
Brian Johnson just said hi.
Hey, Brian. Finish your milk.
Yes, ma'am.
I want milk.
Okay, all right.
Oh, Lord. No, that's fine. Thank you, honey. Am I turning red? Can you see it? What the program that the sidewalk program starts next year. What I'm dealing with this year is just complaint-based sidewalk replacement.
Okay.
But and I'm just asking for this year, if this is something that as we're looking forward, if we get better compliance or less friction, because let's face it, if we do it, the program, they have to replace it. Okay. And unfortunately, some of these individuals do own corner lots where there's going to be quite a few cakes that need to be replaced or repaired. And that's why I appreciate Steve's staff coming out with the individual property owners to show them what needs to be done so they can get a better idea on what the costs are going to be moving forward for them. But I'm only asking for this year right now because we don't know what's going to be going on next year or anything else. But does that answer your question, Brian, or did I miss it in my?
No, it does. And ultimately, why I was asking the question and what I'm trying to wrap my brain around, Director Grenier, it sounds like the proactive sidewalk inspection program, it would be that the sidewalk cakes would get inspected this year, but would be replaced next year.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we're not yet seeing feedback on that front, in terms of inability to pay. I think it's natural that we're going to hear some negative feedback, right? People don't like it when government tells them they have to spend money and replace something on their property. That's the reality. But I think what we have to cut through is it a chronic problem or are these isolated incidents? Because I want to make sure that isolated incidents aren't affecting policy for the entire city. So I don't got any kind of indication there on if this is authentically, a deep-seated issue or if this is just a few incidents.
Right. I've had 6 complaints this year so far. And last year I had, I think I had a little bit more than that. And some people actually withdrew their complaints because they've been to a deep cost. And then I had one neighbor who just went ahead and replaced every cake, and it turned out later on he could have just simply repaired several of them. And he lived on a corner lot, and I think he ended up replacing over 20 at $170 a piece. It was kind of a steep bill for him to foot. I mean, he did it. He knew it was his responsibility. And I get that from most people, as they understand it's their responsibility. It's costly. And I think anytime we can ease that pain a little bit, if we can, I'd like us to be able to do that.
Okay. Thanks for answering my questions to both of you.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other questions? Alder Scannell?
Quick one. So a slab of sidewalk is called a cake?
Yes.
That's a cakewalk?
Yes.
Sorry.
You're not recognized anymore. All right. Well, committee, what are your wishes?
Well,
Director.
Make a motion or?
I'm not sure if there was a motion yet, but Director Grenier, how difficult would it be to estimate? And all that stuff, but and it wouldn't be until next spring.
Well, if Alder Galvin is looking specifically at this year's program, I think we should be able to pull something together within the next 2 weeks.
Right. I'm looking for this year. So what happened was he identified sections last year, marked them this year. They're going to be replacing them this summer if everything comes together.
Director, would it be too cumbersome if it weren't just across the board 0%, if it were more, because this is really based on, the tough economic times, if it was hardship, but then you're going to need some process for people to appeal on a hardship, but we have that, right? Because everybody might not need
that process already exists under assessments. I think it would not be a stretch to apply that to these costs as well. The appeal on assessments. I think that ordinance language would be applicable here as well.
Alder Galvin, is that something you'd be open to as hardship based?
To be honest with you, no. I'd rather see it across the board. I mean, like I said, I've got a lady that's 94. I've got another one where the husband was just laid off. I mean,
Alder Galvin, you're fading away.
Oh, I'm sorry. But I just think there's enough going on. I think that I would prefer to see it across the board.
All right.
Thank you.
Committee? I don't see anybody jumping up and down.
I'll make a motion that we refer this to staff to get some estimates and pick it up from there.
All right. Motion by Alderman Scannell to refer this to staff for some cost estimates and bring it back. Steve, 2 weeks okay, or you need a little more time?
Let's put it down for 2 weeks. That keeps the fire on us.
All right. Is that all right, Alderman Scannell?
Yeah, fine.
2 weeks?
Yep. I'll second.
All right. There's a second? Second by Alder Gerlach, under discussion. All right. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. That motion carried. Thank you, Alder Galvin. Number 3, consideration with possible action on request by Alder LaFave to request committee look at the issuing of a sidewalk cafe permit to Titletown Tobacco per section 6.155 Green Bay Municipal Code. Number 1, definitions. Sidewalk cafe is any group of tables, chairs, benches, or partitions maintained within the public right-of-way for use directly in front of an establishment with a valid restaurant license, held at the March 25th, 2020 Improvement and Service meeting. I don't see Alder LaFave here. Steve, Director Grenier?
Alder LaFave called and told me she was not able to attend. I don't know if you've seen the news today, but things in her neighborhood are not good. But I have no problem explaining what was done here. The way that the ordinance was written, Section 6.155 Municipal Code identifies a sidewalk cafe permit, and it used to refer to those who held a restaurant license. Unfortunately, a couple of years ago, when we recodified Chapter 6 in Municipal Code, the definition for a restaurant was removed. What I've been informed by our law department is the state has a definition of restaurant, and a local municipal definition cannot be more restrictive than what the state definition is. So we're using the state definition of restaurant. And if a bar has a pizza oven, that's a restaurant. As long as they prepare the food. They can't have a bag of chips or a Slim Jim or beef jerky behind the bar. But if they heat up a frozen pizza, they have prepared food on premises. That qualifies as a restaurant. Currently, the ordinance, and those of you who participated in the sidewalk cafe discussions back when the ordinance was originally drafted, from what I remember of that, there was a pretty clear desire on behalf of the Common Council that this sidewalk cafe apply to restaurants and not to bars. It looks to me, based on what my discussions with law department are, that the state has kind of taken that out of our hands. So a bar would qualify as a restaurant, again, provided that they have something as simple as a pizza oven or a panini press there. With that in mind, Titletown Tobacco, that's the old Prohibition Lounge on Broadway, they have a revocable occupancy permit to allow tables, chairs, benches for their patrons to be out in the public right-of-way, and they've been a very good participating agency, a good partner agency with the city on that. They would also like their patrons to be able to enjoy a beverage while they're outside on the tables and chairs having a cigar. But the ordinance doesn't provide that because it's only for a restaurant. A restaurant's pretty ill-defined under state statute. So Alder LaFave to revise our municipal code, and what we've done is we've brought this through law department for their review, and the draft language we've come up with is in the packet that we submitted to you. It would apply to any Class B beer, Class B liquor, or Class B combination license holder. Any of those would be able to apply for the sidewalk cafe permit, and it's a three-step process. You first apply for the revocable occupancy permit, which provides for compliance with the America with Disabilities Act within the public right-of-way. Upon issuance of the revocable occupancy permit, you then seek through the Protection and Policy Committee an amendment of your licensed premises. Once you've received that approval, then there's an application again through the Department of Public Works for the sidewalk cafe permit. But if you've successfully got the other two components, the sidewalk cafe permit is automatically granted. Similarly, if you have one of the two component pieces rescinded, the sidewalk cafe permit goes away. Little bit of a technicality that you need to be aware of. Those of you who've been involved with the issuance of liquor licenses in the past know how difficult it is for us to revoke a liquor license. So let's say, just for the sake of discussion, for one reason or another, the recommendation was made and supported to revoke the sidewalk cafe permit. And that was due to the revocable occupancy permit for the appurtenant construction within the right-of-way, like the tables and chairs. We would revoke the sidewalk occupancy permit. They would no longer have the sidewalk cafe license, but their licensed premises would still include the public right-of-way. You can't sit down. It gets a little bit weird. We're hoping that it never comes into play. And law department assures me that they are ready to deal with it should something like that happen. So basically what we've done is we've revised the ordinance not to reference restaurants, but instead to reference Class B beer, Class B liquor, and Class B combination licenses, and then made the ordinance consistent with state statute.
All right. Thank you, Director. Questions from the committee? Any other alders?
Chairman Weary?
Yep, go ahead, Alder Gaylor.
This is the one that I was asking about before, that I just don't quite understand what this statement means, that she's asking the committee to look at the issuing of a sidewalk cafe permit. And I promise you, I have read all of this material in the packet, and I just don't understand. First of all, it seems to me that you're saying Titletown Tobacco does not have a pizza oven or anything that could be called or make it be a restaurant, right?
We don't know that.
Okay, that's fine. Second thing is Alder Lefebvre asking that we consider giving them a permit, or that they have a permit and we consider rescinding it? I don't understand what she's asking for.
They do not currently have a permit because they have not demonstrated that they're a restaurant to us, because our definition of restaurant is silent now. Okay. So we've not asked the question. Historically, that has been considered to be a bar, and under the ordinance as it's written, they would not be eligible for it. Now, they could make a demonstration that they are a restaurant by having a pizza oven or something. They've not done that, and rather than get into that subtlety of argument, Alder Lefebvre asked us to take a look at potentially revising the ordinance instead.
And I've seen how the ordinance is revised. Is that something that's just being shown as a possibility, or has action been taken on it?
Nothing has been taken. We brought draft ordinance language for your consideration, and I specifically asked Law Department to show the strikeouts and the revisions so that you could see very clearly what the ordinance used to read versus what it's proposed to read in the future.
Okay, one more question. How does Titletown Tobacco fit into the situation specifically?
Right now, they don't qualify for a sidewalk cafe unless they were to come and demonstrate that they are a restaurant.
But they've asked for one, they've applied for one?
I don't know that they've applied for it. They've inquired about it and have been told that they do not qualify.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Alder. Any other questions from the committee or anyone here?
Alder Weary, just one question, if I may.
Sure, Alder Johnson.
Director Grenier, the one, regardless, I guess, of which direction the committee ultimately, falls on this, the one thing that maybe concerns me is a three-step process. It seems to be much more cumbersome than it needs to be. How do we, if the committee were to choose to take action on this today, how do we condense that into just a one application process? Check these three boxes, all three of them will be addressed by us. So that way we're not putting people in front of all these different committees.
I struggled with that myself and tried to work that process through the law department. It still will take three independent actions, but I don't know necessarily that the applicant is going to have to fill out more than one form. On the single form or whatever documentation we come up with for the application for the sidewalk cafe permit, that will automatically start with INS getting the revocable occupancy permit, presuming that the revocable occupancy permit is granted, we'll send that out, get it executed by the applicant. When we get that back properly executed, we will take care of notifying protection and policy that there's a request for amendment of premises. Once protection and policy takes action on that, we will take the application back and grant the Sidewalk Cafe license because they've already applied for it when they initiated step one.
So I appreciate the fact that that's how the process needs to work with our current setup. So I guess maybe the more direct question is, how do we change the setup so that one committee can just handle this particular application and that we don't need to bounce it to multiple committees?
I don't know that we can, because
by current setup, I understand, INS has oversight of the sidewalks, protection policy has oversight of the liquor, the liquor license. So I understand, again, why that's separated right now. But is there an action that we can take to just condense it?
From where I see it, I don't think so. That might be a question for you to ask the city attorneys.
Sure. And perhaps maybe what makes more sense, at least for today's discussion, is let's first see how INS lets this conversation unfold. And then, how we streamline the process might be a secondary discussion. But at least I just wanted to broach this subject.
All right. Thank you, Alder Johnson. All right. Anyone else on this item? Questions, comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the changes.
All right. Motion by Alder Scannell to approve the recommended changes to the ordinance regarding sidewalk cafe permits. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Alder Burnett. Under discussion. Anybody wish to discuss it?
Question again.
Sure. Alder Gala.
I'm sorry I'm having so much trouble with this one. Does Director Grenier, does the city, is this what the city wants to do? These are the changes you've proposed and this is how you'd like to move forward? Are you advising that we do this?
Department of Public Works is neutral on this. I believe Law Department is neutral on it because when I had the discussions with the Law Department and with the mayor about this, I did remind them that there was significant discussion relative to only allowing restaurants, not bars, when the original ordinance was passed. Both the Law Department and the mayor brought back to me that if that's all somebody has to do is demonstrate that they've got a pizza oven, why are we forcing them to go through that exercise? That's cumbersome.
Okay.
So if that's all a bar has to do is have a pizza oven back there, whether they use it or not is irrelevant. They have the ability. They meet the definition under state statute. You might as well just allow any Class B liquor or Class B license holder to have this privilege.
Okay.
If they're a responsible business, they're a responsible business.
All right. Thank you, Alder. Alder Scannell.
Yeah, just for Alder Gerlach. The city for a while, and I was part of this protection policy, played a big role in this, is to try to create a more vibrant downtown, and then it's just spread out throughout the city of a cafe atmosphere. And we'd like to try to also start pushing for a more bike pedestrian friendly, that just jives into that whole cafe atmosphere. So this is something the city has been kind of working towards for quite a while.
So Alder Scannell, you are in favor of this. You think this is a good idea?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes I need a little guidance.
All right, any other committee members?
Chairman, just one more question.
Oh, Alder Johnson.
Yeah, if that's the action or the motion that the committee is going to take, perhaps maybe just ask that we could put that rider on there to check with Law Department on how we can streamline that process.
Okay, thank you.
I disagree with that. I don't think protection and policy should be giving up their expertise for the alcohol end, and I don't think for sure INS should be giving up its expertise on the sidewalk end. I think that's just the nature of the beast we're going to have to deal with, that these respective committees, I can't see how we'd be able to mesh those two together. in any productive way. We're just going to have to keep them separate. I should think that, I mean, both committees meet roughly the same weeks and everything, so it would be pretty expeditious, I would think, any process, unless one of the committees holds up the permit for one reason or another. But then again, if it's held up, there would be a reason for that. So I would hate to think that this committee would be infringing on or stepping on protection and policies toes. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think they'd want to give up their jurisdiction, their committee work, and I don't think we should give up ours to them. So I think I appreciate the concern, but I don't think I see any way going forward with it.
And I appreciate
Alder Johnson.
Alder Scannell, and that's fine. I'll just address it separately. But I kind of view this as one jurisdiction, which is the city of Green Bay. And we got to find a way to make things easy when working with people in the city, not make it harder. So again, I'm happy to take that up separately.
All right. Thank you, Alder Johnson. Any other comments, questions? Alder Steuer.
Thank you, Your Honor. Or Chair, I should say.
No. You can stick with that.
Chair, Your Honor. Chair. Okay, whatever. I appreciate Alder Johnson's comments on these, but I also agree with Alder Scannell. It's a little difficult. I know that we're trying to streamline things and trying to make it as simple as possible, but there's two specific actions that happen from each of these committees, and I think it's important that we at least look at that. Maybe down the road we could look at it differently, but I think right now it's working, and I would say continue that route. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Comments?
Yes, sir.
All right, Steve, Director Grenier.
Hopefully this may alleviate Alder Johnson's concerns, although it may cause other ones. The way things are written currently and the current state of practice with revocable occupancy permits, those are actually handled at a staff level unless denied. A denial can be appealed through INS. So staff would be handling the revocable occupancy permit. It would then go to protection and policy simply for the amendment of licensed premises. It comes right back to staff, and we issue the sidewalk cafe permit. INS really doesn't see it unless we say no to something. So that we are looking to try to streamline this as much as possible while still respecting the jurisdictions of the various departments and committees.
Thank you, Director. Any other comments? All right, those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carried. All right, on to number 4. Consideration with possible action on request by Alderman Steuer to have the City of Green Bay look at facilities at Green Bay Metro Boat Launch and see about alternatives to the existing docks, including portable docking systems such as those at the Brown County facilities in Alloway and De Pere. Alderman Steuer.
Thank you, Chair, correct? I will call you Chair. Okay. Anyway, some weeks ago, one of my constituents who is here, and I will ask to have the floor open so he can speak, Mr. Scott Neverden. Anyway, a couple of weeks ago, he had talked to me about a number of things at the boat launch. And I know, Director Grenier, we've talked about things over time, too, with docking facilities and this, that, and the other thing in Green Bay. And I was very interested to drive over there. And this is about a month ago. And I took a number of pictures just looking at the facilities the way they are. And they're more permanent over there. I also drove down to Brown County and De Pere. I didn't get to Alloway, but I was looking at how each facility was handling docking, docking type things with boaters. And, I had a good conversation with my constituent about this, and he brought up a lot of good points. And before I really continue much, I would really like for him to weigh in. And I kind of agreed with him on a number of things, and I just would like him to have that opportunity. So I would propose if you could open the floor, and I would appreciate that.
Motion to open the floor.
Second. All right. We have a motion by Alderman Scannell, seconded by Alderman Burnett to open the floor. The discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The floor is now open. If anyone is here for this item, I just need your name and address.
Scott Meverden.
All right, and then your address, Mr. Meverden?
1515 Bond Street.
Thank you. And the floor is yours.
Over this past couple of months, the Pier Dam is always open the last week of March to accommodate for the walleyes or trout running in. We have paid to the city of Green Bay, or we can pick it up at the city of Green Bay or the DNR, the boat parking that we have to put on our trailers. That goes to Brown County, I believe, and I don't have the information if it goes to Brown County and the city of Green Bay. My question is, the pier docks and the pier docks go in at the end of March for the walleye runs. I do have a boat myself, and I have seen the problems down at Green Bay Boat Launch. The docks, for one, I know are out of date. Mark had sent me a video to watch, and Smokies that is now attached to South Bay. He had made a comment that went to the mayor, Jim Schmidt, and one of their offices saying that the docks are 30 years old. And I went down there and I looked at them. My wife and I took a ride. They are made of 2x12s. If anybody knows what wood does in water over time, it rots. And you have to replace those. My question is why can't Green Bay make some kind of adjustment to the dock system for Bay Beach, the Green Bay Metro Boat Launch, to make it either out of aluminum or steel? And the composite boards on the top. Why can't Green Bay alone be as one with Brown County when they're putting theirs in at the fairgrounds and at Alloway Boat Launch, and they're up to date, but Green Bay is out of date, but the Green Bay residents are also buying the registration boat stickers to park their trailers there, and that's supposed to be going to the revenue for Green Bay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Meverden. Any question, committee, for Mr. Meverden? Any questions? Anyone? All right, Alderman Sawyer.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Scott. I know that you were talking about a couple of the permanent features over at the Metro Boat Launch. You know, there was a couple things there. I mean, first of all, the parking lot is in pretty bad shape too. Needs some repair. That's another point. But as far as some of the permanent features that are there, the docking facilities themselves is like concrete, and you said one of them is in bad shape that you noticed, and people are having a hard time getting into their boats. They're slipping, per se. I mean, you said you've witnessed some of this, so I wanted you to talk a little bit about your thoughts. And you've worked with metal, you've done some of this work in the past, so you understand some of the construction type of things with it. So I guess I would like your opinion about the permanent features that we have at Green Bay. You already talked about, you know, the wood and the problem of rotting and such. But as far as what they're doing at Alloway and in De Pere, where they're putting in these temporary setups, and it seems to be working very, very well. So,
go ahead, Mr. Member.
From what I've seen is the parking lot is in disarray down at Green Bay Boat Launch. The last couple of weeks that my wife and I have taken a drive, if you're looking at the dock, it's docking system itself. You have 6 poles. The one closest to the water on the base or on the river side now I've gone out and measured them, and I don't know if I should have done that or if I should not have done that. If you go from the river side to the first, which would be the middle set of poles, that's a 30-foot span. If you go from the middle poles to the second poles, it's a 15-foot span. With the high water last year, people were still trying to dock their boats in Green Bay City Boat Launch. Even if you would build it out of aluminum or metal, it would bring it out into the parking lot. Alloway and De Pere have axles that even my half-ton pickup truck could pick up and wheel it into the water, hook them together, and keep on pushing. The parking lot, it's still being used as far as parking, but the parking is totally messed up down there. You have 6 rows of parking for boats and trailers that are only half used. And if people don't have boats and trailers, they have to park all the way over by the access road to get past the pavilion. And then there's only two rows, maybe a block long, for the people to park. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but if they're getting on a boat, that's 2 blocks that they have to walk. Why can't we cut the parking lot in half for boats and trailers and the other half for cars? Without the City of Green Bay Parking Utility giving people tickets. Now, they're gonna probably have to put signs up and say cars past this area back. But the parking lot itself needs attention because of, if you're looking at the docks 7 and 8 poles, and the poles are labeled, 7 and 8 has I don't even want to call it a pothole. It's a crater. Because you can put both sides of your axles of your boat in that hole, and then you would cause damage to your bearings, your tires, possibly your axles. People are staying away from 7 and 8. I had told Mark Sawyer, and within 2 days, maybe, I don't even know how long it was. Within 2 days, there was two temporary docks put together, and they are operating right now. Going through Alloway's docking system and the Pure docking system, there have been more trucks, trailers, boaters now docking at Green Bay and just using 2 docks. Within the last 2 days, we went down there and we counted 19 people at Green Bay. We went down to Alloway and we counted half that. And that has been going on for, I'd say, the last week, that now Green Bay, because they have their docks in, otherwise there would not be a dock there yet until Green Bay got all their systems together.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Meverden. Any other questions for Mr. Meverden? Anybody else here to comment on this item?
Yes, ma'am.
Alder Gerlach.
Thank you.
Well,
yeah,
did you have a question for Mr.
Yeah,
did you have a question for Mr. Meverden?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead, Alder Gerlach.
Yes, ma'am.
It sounds to me, Mr. Meverden, like you really understand this and you have experience with it. I have no experience with this whatsoever. And I don't know if this is appropriate, but it just seems like you have some really good ideas and some specific ideas. And I wonder if it makes sense for you to just sit down with Alder Steuer and come up with a specific proposal of what you think ought to be done and bring it to the committee. I don't know, Alder Weary, is that appropriate?
Well, anything's appropriate. Certainly, they could even sit down with Director Grenier, and ballpark it.
I don't know where everybody grew up at, if they were actually grown up in Green Bay or, came here when they were younger. But I grew up in Green Bay, and I remember that being a thriving dock system out there when I was younger with my grandfather. Right now, it's in disarray. I would be ashamed to show that to my grandfather right now.
I'm going to give you 3 seconds. Exactly 3 fucking seconds.
I would.
What?
Go ahead, Mr. Meverden.
The docking system down there right now, I had talked to Mark, and Mark had told me that there was another alderman up for development in that area. As far as I don't even know what you were trying to explain to me, Mark, but
okay.
the parking lot itself needs to be not so much resurfaced. I worked in asphalt before. I know what you can do with asphalt. It's just the time and the people needed for that. I could get estimates for rebuilding a dock. I know how to rebuild a dock. As far as how the city of Green Bay wants to go with it, I could even build the dock. I know people that would help me build that dock to a safe docking system.
I appreciate it. Maybe we'll take you up on that, Mr. Meverden. But
well,
let's see here.
I'm not working, so
you've probably been on many of them. Any other questions for Mr. Meverden? Otherwise, let's bring this back to committee so we can discuss it and get some action on it. I appreciate you speaking on this, Mr. Meverden, and the committee is going to talk about it right now for a while, okay?
Okay. Motion to close the floor.
Can we get motion by Alderman Scannell. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Gerlach to close the floor. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right. What are your wishes with this item? I guess.
Well, let's.
Alderman Steuer, you brought this forward. What are you looking for?
Well,
yeah. Let's.
Okay.
Bear with me, Alderman Steuer. Bear with me one moment. I'm going to go to Director Grenier just to kind of fill in some gaps, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Director. I know we've talked about this in the past.
Yes, and I see Corey Mim with the Parks, Rec and Forestry Department is on the line with us. I don't know if this is the item that Corey is here for interest on, but she may also wish to weigh in at some point in time. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that she was here. Yes, we are aware of the damage to the launch at the 7-8 ramps that did occur this winter. So that's why we have put the barricades up and not allowed people to use that. With the damage that's occurred to the docking systems over the last 3 seasons, we only have enough pieces to use 2 docks at this point in time. Everything else is damaged. DPW has been in discussions with the Park, Rec, and Forestry Department this year to talk about dock replacement out there because the docks they are 30 years old. DPW staff does those docks during the winter. We take them into an enclosed facility and rebuild them each year, and we're getting to a point where we're putting more into them than they're worth. So we have actually been talking about that, but that's going to involve a bond request. To significantly change the docking system is also going to require us to change the in-water portion of the docks. Now, what we are looking at, I've tasked my staff with taking a look at, instead of having a single platform that goes out into the river that's between two columns, the pile, to potentially look at a system more like what's at City Deck, where it's offset off of only one set of piling that has a circular collar that hooks onto it. So City is looking into replacement of those docking facilities. What we're dealing with is a question of money at this point in time. This being like several of our facilities, the reason Parks is involved, the water's edge is what separates the jurisdiction. So the parking lot, the building, the restroom areas, that kind of stuff, that's all being maintained and under jurisdiction of the Parks Department, and we put the in-water facilities in. That's why DPW is involved. We have dates when we put our facilities are based on our historic knowledge of when we can expect to have safe facilities out there, not only for our personnel to get those facilities in the water, but also to protect the docks from damage. I know we've been significantly criticized by fishing groups over the past couple of years that Green Bay, you need to get your docks in the water a lot quicker. And the last 3 years in a row, if we would have put the docks in when the fishing groups had asked us to do it, we had ice shoves come back up the bay and we would have destroyed our docks each of the last years. So we do know what's going on. We're so close to the mouth of the river that we are susceptible to wave and ice action, where De Pere and Alloway are not. They are significantly upriver and they are sheltered. Smokies is actually closer to the bay, but they're inside of a breakwater. They are also sheltered and protected from ice and wave damage, where we are not. So we do have to be careful. We're talking about taxpayer-funded infrastructure out there, and we can't place that in jeopardy of being damaged. So some of the things that Mr. Meverden has asked for are currently under consideration between DPW and Parks, and we're trying to find a place to work those into a future bond issue.
Thank you, Director. Alderman Steuer.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Well, I want to thank Scott for his testimony and Director Grenier for your comments as well. I think a lot of us are aware of some of the geographic limitations that are set up because of that. But with that being said, and I realize Parks will have to be involved in this as well. But I think it's very important if we're talking, especially in this time frame, that we're looking at fees and such with the city. Having a number of boaters, having quite a few folks being able to use the facility, those monies, a lot of that will be coming into the city of Green Bay, and I think it's important that we don't deny that possibility. So, granted, you're near the mouth of the river, you're near the mouth of the bay, actually, and I understand some of those dynamics. But from what I saw, and I'm not a boater, but I went down there and took a look at it, and I was kind of stunned, at some of the damage there. And I realized, Director Grenier, that you did bring this up. So I'm happy that you and the Parks Department are at least looking at this. But I think moving forward, I think it's very important that we as a city have some kind of a plan or something in place. And believe me, Scott knows 10 times more than I do about this, and I would appreciate his comments and any other folks that use this, have some come our way so that we can utilize that moving forward. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. On the committee, like to comment or ask a question? Is there anyone here from the Parks Department for this item?
Well, do you want to open the floor again?
For the committee.
What's that? Okay.
Mr. Meverden wants.
What would the committee like?
Can you open the floor one more time?
I'm on the floor to hear from interested parties.
Yep. Second, I had to unmute.
Yeah, I was going to say, I saw your mouth moving. Burnett and Scannell to open the floor. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Mr. Meverden, you got the floor. Go ahead, Mr. Meverden.
Steve brought up a good point about the being right at the mouth of the bay. I don't agree with taking the docks out in December, though, because that's what happened last year. Now, if there was a problem with getting the docks out before the ice came in, that I could understand. But the docks were left in until late December when the ice did come back in. So having them outside of the poles as a floating pole, that would be all fine and dandy, but I guess my question is why are we separate in this? When if we were one municipality, we should have a mind of our own of when we put the docks in and when we take them out. Not Brown County rules 2 parts of it and Green Bay is on their own. The docks are there for people to enjoy the open waterway, but I don't know of many boaters that don't put their equipment away at the end of December and still ice.
All right.
With their boats.
Thank you, Mr. Meverden. Any questions for Mr. Meverden from the committee? All right. I'll entertain a motion to close the floor. Alder Scannell and Alder Burnett. Did you second that? Okay. Those in favor of closing the floor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right. What are your wishes, committee? I guess, Director, is this Director Grenier? Is this something that would be ready to bring back in a not too long of a time to kind of give us an update?
Well, it depends on what type of an update you're looking for. What I can tell you is everything that we've got that's usable is in the water right now. One of the things Mr. Meverden did was talking about is when we pulled the docks last fall, that I think we left them in 2 weeks longer than I wanted them in. We've got a schedule we use, and we did kind of concede a little bit to the late season fishermen to leave them in, but we have with the dock facilities we have at this point until we buy new, and we need a crane to get those docks in and out. We try to time that when we're doing the other docks, we only have to rent and mobilize that crane one time, because that's a pretty substantial cost to get that crane in here to get those docks out. To bring it in a second time, again, that comes out of our budget. So we want to maximize the amount of work we're getting out of that crane at any one time. Also, because we have to get guys out on the docks, out in the water, to get them both in and out, when we get to certain parts of the year, I just don't feel comfortable putting my staff at risk out there to do that work. So,
well, Director Gray, what I would ask, is there any kind of timeline right now that's been discussed as far as when we'd want to replace them? Next year, the year after? Based
on the preliminary discussions that I've had with the Parks Director, we didn't think that we could get it into this year's bond issue. This year's bond issue is pretty tight. We're looking at doing the best we can to keep limping these things along for this year, and with a hope to get something for the 2021 bond issue.
Okay. So would this come back to Parks first, or your committee? Do you know which one?
I would expect to see it as part of our capital program for 2021.
Alderman Starr, you had your hand up.
Well, that's fine. I appreciate the comments, Director Grenier. I think in the interim, you and Parks Department can discuss this and talk about, how we can go about it. I've already done a bit of work on this, on my own, and so has Mr. Meverden, as well as one or two other folks that I know that are boaters. And I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could put something together in a proactive way that we could deliver to your departments and you could utilize it accordingly. I mean, it would be nice to understand the bonding requests are very steep this year. So, if we got to wait a year, I guess. But like I said, I feel from what I saw, it's not very safe at this time. And people can wheel and deal and try to get in their boat. Saw was part of the problem is because the water is high, and it just is not real conducive to real safe entry. My other thing is the fact that I think the city is losing out as far as fees and things like that at this time. We're an ocean port. We have water. We've got an unbelievable resource that so many other communities would die for, and I think we need to utilize this as best as we can. So I guess what I'm asking Director Grenier is if you would entertain some information from us that you could utilize as well, or would you prefer to just work on it with the parks?
Not only would we entertain it, we would very much welcome it.
Well, we'll be happy to do that. And I know, Scott, we can't open the floor again. I mean, I don't think, but no, unless you want to, it's up to you, Chair. Anyway, I'm done for now. I think that we've made some inroads here. I think I'll talk to Mr. Meverden and some other folks as well, and I think we can put some things together. And if there's input from the council on this, I think it would be very good. I would appreciate any comments that we could bring forward from citizens and also from council. I think we could do some good things.
Thank you, Alderman Sawyer.
Thank you.
Committee members, Alderman Scannell.
I'd just like to make a motion then if you're going to be meeting if Alder Steuer and concerned citizens are going to be meeting with Grenier, and then if there's any actionable item for us, they can come back to us with it. I would just receive and place this on file for now. That's my motion.
Right, there's a motion to receive and place on file. Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Yeah. Second by Alder Gerlach. And that's with the understanding that there's a group that will be discussing this and working with the director. Mm-hmm. And when they're ready to maybe bring something back, then we can take it up again. Is that okay? Any other discussion on this item? All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carried. Thank you, Alderman Steuer. Thank you, Mr. Meverden. I agree. It's long overdue for those, so keep pushing. All right, number 5, consideration with possible action on request by Alderman Vanderlee on behalf of area residents for the sinkhole in the front yard of 1831 Van Nuys Court near the newly installed mini storm sewer be investigated by the Public Works Department and to be fixed in the spring. This is referred to March 25th. I don't think Alderman Vanderlee is here.
Staff wants to report that all work has been completed, and Alderman Vanderleest was notified of that. So we're just closing the loop on this.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Way too easy. Alderman Scannell, receive a second. Second by Burnett. Discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Number 6, consideration of possible action on the request by Alderman Weary on adjusting mini sewer hookup fees. This was held from March 25th meeting. And I know there's an attachment here regarding the fees. The discussion was just to Alder Gerlach. The fees have, of course, crept up over the years, and now they're a little over $1,000. We had temporarily set them back to $500 to encourage people to hook up to the mini sewer to help with the runoff issues. And it went back up again. And I had requested that we put it back down again to see if we could get more people hooked up on the mini sewer. So Director Grenier was going to provide information on fees, which he did, and I'm going to turn it over to him.
Okay, well, we did provide a memo that kind of outlines the history of the mini storm program and how the fee structure was developed. It is interesting to note that back in 1976, the Common Council did specifically indicate that the charge for mini storm should be the same as hooking up to the storm sewer. Again, we go through and we talk a lot about what's going on here. The short version of this is the storm sewer exiting the pavement. We do allow residents to hook their sump pumps or downspouts to that to help alleviate nuisance conditions. The mini storm is for areas where a storm sewer connection to the main is not readily available. What that can mean is one of two things. Either the street doesn't have storm sewer, in which case the residents never paid the assessment associated with the storm sewer, or the storm sewer is out in the road, but a lateral was never extended to the property. And what we're trying to do is minimize the cost to the resident, not to have to dig into the road and do all the road restoration. So instead, we have them hook up to the mini storm. Again, it is interesting to note, or worthwhile to note, the pipe to get down to from the point of connection, we typically tie into an inlet in our storm sewer system and then run a small diameter 6-inch PVC pipe in the terrace and provide that point of connection for the sump pump and or roof drains. That small main is not assessed. They're only charged the connection fee, again, which represents what would it have cost for the materials, not the pavement restoration to the main in the road. So what we've identified in here is that the storm utility considerably subsidizes those mini storm connections already. So the property owner is getting a fairly substantial break, even with the charging the same cost as it would be for a connection to the main. The other thing is, unless we have a justifiable, defensible reason to charge a differential rate structure, we're prohibited from doing so. And that would be a discussion that you would have to have with the law department.
Thank you, Director. I know we did talk about that back in 2018 and we moved ahead with it and didn't have an issue. I think the overwhelming concern being the alleviating of flooding in neighborhoods. I'd be interested to see what the committee thought on this issue, or anyone else. Let's see. Flipping between the pages here, Alder Scannell. Go ahead, Alder Scannell.
Just some questions. Alder Weary, are you getting a lot of feedback? I haven't gotten anything from my constituents or anything. Are there a lot of people not hooking up because of the cost, or have you heard any kind of pushback or anything that brought this to you?
I have encountered that. One had looked into it, during a year when the fee was lower, and then of course when he went to do it, it was doubled. So there are people who are holding off, on almost $1,000 fee plus whatever you pay the contractor. I don't know if it's $500 to $1,000, so you got $1,500 to $2,000 to help alleviate water issues in your yard. That's not something that everybody can just drop on something like this. A lot of time that flooding affects multiple properties. So I'm just looking like we did in the past to help encourage these hookups.
Yeah, then it would just be to Director Grenier. How big a hit is this on your department?
Well, we did. The last page of the attachment shows the difference spent versus collected on the mini storm.
I saw that. So
in 2019, we lost almost 271,000, 270,557.28.
And how is that made up? Is that wouldn't be through bonding, would it, or?
Bonding supported by the stormwater utility, yes.
Okay, all right. Mm-hmm.
So, Director, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you have 20 people sign up for this program and you have the fee from $970 down to, $480, the amount of money we'd be short is the $480 times 20, 90.
That would be the difference. That'd be the difference between the maximum fee collected. Yes.
Okay. So in the last few years, we've had 11, 14, 13, 19. So, if you go with 20, you're looking at a hit of maybe 10 grand if 20 people sign up. So that's what the effect would be.
Okay. Thanks.
If there's more people, it'd be more of an effect.
Right.
Alder Gerlach?
Just to be clear, though, if you lower the fee, you cut it in half, let's say, as you're proposing, that's not just like what you said, a $10,000 hit. That's in addition to the money that's already being lost in the program, right? Because I'm looking at this page and it's all in the red. So the city has lost money on this all along. So it sounds to me like we would just be losing more money. Is that right?
That is correct. But as Alderman Weary has indicated, the incremental loss is a relatively small one.
And it's okay. Anyone else wish to? Alder Steuer.
Thank you, Chair. This has been an issue in my district for a while too, with different folks that have to hook up to the system this way. I'm all for the program stating that, well, if one person's going to do it, if you can get the entire neighborhood to lock into this, Alder Weary suggested the lower fee. I would feel that there would be more folks that would get involved with this, and maybe we could cut into that red a little bit. But, if you just do one here, one there, it's quite expensive for an individual homeowner. So I don't know, Director Grenier, if we have a map or something out there that shows areas in the city that have had the mini sewer program instituted. It would be nice to get a feel for that. And I'm just saying, if we can move forward and look at other areas, and it maybe would be neighborhood association meetings or something that would let the citizens know ahead of time that, hey, this is a possibility and you might need to hook up before you sell your home. Different things like that, just to have that information. I don't have one myself in my house, but there will come a day where I'll need to do it. So I think part of it is the initial cost. People are like, oh boy, it's like the sidewalk issue. It's, storms, mini sewer, things like that. It would be nice to have a feel for the city, how much or how many areas are covered by mini sewers and such, and work off of that. So that's just my comment.
Thank you, Alderman Steuer. Alder Johnson.
Thank you. I will just maybe echo the sentiment that I do support the reduction in the fee. One thing that hasn't been brought up, well, for one, my district does experience a lot of flooding in different capacities, and I'm actually holding on right now to about 6 different residents, their requests to look at this. And so I think at least in my area, it's impacting quite a few people. But the thing that hasn't been talked about with my district in particular, in an area of the city that really could see one of the biggest benefits from the hookups, is that this is also one of the lowest income, if not, I think, the lowest income census tract in the entire city of Green Bay. And so we've kind of got this perfect storm here where you have a district that's experiencing a lot of flooding, and then you have residents that don't have the means to do the hookup. So I think providing some relief in that regard would be a really useful tool to help encourage people to make those hookups and alleviate some of that flooding.
Thank you, Alder Johnson. Anyone else wish to comment or ask a question on this one? All right, I'll entertain a motion if anybody wishes to make one.
Yeah.
It was Alderman Weary. It was your communication, I believe. Anything you want of this? I mean, would a receive and place on file be appropriate? Is this a budget item? Should we discuss it then?
I was actually looking to have the fee reduced back down to 500.
Yeah.
So a motion to reduce the fee to 500. There you go.
I'll second that. And if you would, Alder Weary, I agree with the conversation. I remember a time when it was much reduced, and this was a big service that was provided in the city. And you know, it's hard to balance our budget a lot of times, but this is something that if it can alleviate flooding and damage to homes, it's something that as a city we should encourage and figure it out in the end. So,
okay, but
go ahead, Director.
Just to be clear, I want to understand why the alders think this is going to alleviate flooding. It has nothing to do with that. This is simply hooking up somebody's sump pump to a storm rather than letting it discharge to grade.
Well,
but you just answered it, I think, Director. A lot of times people have it pumping right back into the yard and just keeps circulating, or goes into the neighbor's yard and causes ponding water when you can just get it away.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
I'm not referring to street flooding. It's yard flooding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I meant. I guess it's all based on grade of a person's property, and a lot of that, you know, falls on the homeowner. But if it's outside of the drain tile, it seems to help. But I've seen yards all throughout the city when we have a lot of moisture in spring where their yard is just flooded, and unless that pipe can go all the way to the street, which we don't allow, I do think it prevents yard flooding. But that's just my opinion from what I've experienced.
Depends how many trees there are.
Yep. Always.
Right? Well, there was a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this item? Alder Gerlach?
And this is a stupid question. I'm sorry, I have to ask this. Are you talking about that black hose that I see coming out of people's houses all over my neighborhood?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm sorry. That is disgusting. And it, you know what it does? It runs into the road and then it runs down the street and freezes solid in winter. And it is, oh my God. Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
There, just one question.
Alder Scannell, sure.
Yeah. Do you know, can block grant money or anything be used for this sort of thing? Do you know, Director?
That's a great question.
There's no, okay.
Probably in only certain neighborhoods, maybe.
Okay.
Yes, it would have to be relegated to low to moderate income neighborhoods.
Okay.
All right. Any other discussion on this item?
I would just like to comment on that. For example, my neighborhood falls into that block grant category. Maybe it's worth looking into. Maybe neighborhoods that do, because there's a lot of that in my neighborhood. I live in Old Preble. And, maybe it is something to consider if this can be covered with the block grant funds, because I am just not in favor of reducing the fee and going further in debt with a program that's already been losing money all the time.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. The motion on the second was to lower the fee to 500. Those in favor of that item?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. That passes 3-1. And probably talk about it at council next week. But I do like the idea for the block grant. Those have been all designated for this year already, but next year I'm sure we could definitely be interested in having that available. All right, we are on to number 7. Consideration with possible action on request by Alder Weary for an update on repairs or resurfacing of Shawano Avenue, referred from March 25th, and amended to request staff to find out from WISDOT how to get the project scheduled. think we had a little progress on this, Director Grenier.
We had more progress than we thought. Included in the packet is a letter from myself to Dan Segerstrom, who's a project development supervisor with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation here in the Northeast region, requesting that the project be included for scoping for a future surface transportation improvement program administered through the Wisconsin DOT. Just today, I received a letter back from Ann Ebent, who is the Northeast Region Programming and Scoping Engineer. And Ann, the letter reads, "Dear Mr. Grenier, thank you for your request in scheduling an improvement project on State Trunk Highway 29 Shawano Avenue between Hudson Street and North Oakland Avenue. My understanding is the original pavement was constructed in 1948. The first overlay was completed in 2005. After reviewing the current pavement data and briefly discussing with the Northeast Region's pavement engineer, the Northeast Region will schedule an improvement project in state fiscal year 2028, pending funding availability. It is likely to be a mill and overlay type project. So within the next several months, programming is going to be reaching out to us to begin gathering information and to enter into a state municipal agreement. Any utility work underlying that road will have to be funded separately by the city, which is common for DOT projects. And then a reminder that the city would be responsible for 25% of the design costs. But the great news is the state has included this in their 2028 fiscal year. So I realize that's 8 years out. I get that. But there is a light at the end of this particular tunnel. So my staff at DPW will continue to do what we can to maintain and patch that road and hold it together for the next 8 years. But I think, Alder Weary, I think I may have told you that absolute best case, they've already got the first 6 years of the program spoken for. We're looking at some point beyond that. To come in at 8 years was fantastic. So I'm really happy with the response we got from WISDOT on this. So this afternoon when I got the email from DOT, I reached out to my division heads and the Green Bay Water Utility and said, fantastic news. We were notified that we've got a project coming and 2028 will be here before you know it. I mean, 8 years goes by in the blink of an eye. I've already been the director for 7.5 by point of comparison. So we are already starting to scope and plan in-house so that we're ready to have that discussion with DOT.
Well, that is great news. I mean, for how long have we, Steve, pounded our head against the wall on this road, right, with the state?
4 years.
So do we have a good plan of how to address the minefield to make it less of a minefield for the next 8 years?
Again, we're just going to continue to go out there and patch the holes. The problem is the underlying concrete. It's a 1929 concrete. It's literally crumbling. But we can't anticipate where the next hole is going to come because we'll patch here and then a hole develops over there because the concrete underneath it completely fell apart.
Boy, if we can, I know you guys do a great job. We can really focus, especially on those side ones along the sidewalk. If you drive on that one, you're taking, man, you better have good insurance for your car.
Agreed.
Okay. Alder Burnett, you had your hand up?
Before Alder's here, you, Sawyer, Johnson, Scannell, this is all your area. I would say, I mean, it's nice to hear that it's being acknowledged, to hear that it's 8 years, I guess. In BP world, maybe Grenier has a different viewpoint, but I think that seems like forever in the future. I mean, I would wonder if now that they've acknowledged that it's a project that they're going to fund or look at funding, can we just maybe turn up the public, pressure through our state legislators to move that up a little more? I'm not as optimistic. 8 years just seems. I drive that road all the time. It's rough. I mean, it's rough. 8 years from now, who knows what it's going to look like? Go ahead. I know it's your district.
Thank you, Alder Burnett. You'll be the only one left on the council at that time, Alder Burnett.
No, I'll be long gone by then. Trust me.
Alder Steuer.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Alder Burnett on this too. I mean, we're looking at Gray Street in our area, and the last time that was worked on was 1952. So I look at dates on this, and granted, 8 years does seem like a long time, and I know it takes a while for the wheels of government to grind, but you know, we got a number of alders here that Shawano Avenue is really not good. I wish we could do this for some other roads in Green Bay as well. I'd like to throw Bond Street in, but we're talking about Shawano right now. So I think with that being said, you know, if we can put a little pressure on the state, I don't know, Director Grenier, if you feel that would help at all, but my feeling is that if we can get some little quicker movement on this, I don't see any harm in trying.
Steve, have you seen credits move up if pressure's applied?
As I indicated, the first 6 years of their program is already committed. They have projects under contract signed, ready, moving forward. We're only going into the scoping. Scoping typically is 12 to 18 months of a project. So I don't think you're going to get any sooner than 7 years, because again, the first 6 years of the program, that's already been approved by the governor, it's signed, it's done. So absolute best case, I don't want to characterize it as poking them with a stick, but essentially you're going to be poking them with a stick to move up 1 year.
I would never poke anybody with a stick.
Oh, yes, you would.
Unless it was Randy.
If this one thing, Chair Weary, if the state government allocates more funding to roads, that's how it can move up. Will that happen in Madison? Likely not. But I mean, that is a possibility if this governor or any future governor and their legislature allocates more money to roads. But I won't hold my breath.
Okay. Did I miss anyone's hand here? Alder Jensen?
Thank you, Chairman.
Can't hear you. Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me? You'll be good?
Yep,
so
perfect.
Director, we appreciate your enthusiasm given how long we've been poking at this, but I'm less enthused thinking about 8 years and putting it into perspective of the current condition of that road. And so, I've had previous conversations with our state representative, and at one point he had suggested that the state does maintain an emergency fund for certain types of road repairs. And I can't help but wonder if there might be an opportunity for us to make a request of that fund to put a more comprehensive patch on that road, similar to what was done on North Broadway in Alder Scannell's district. It's my understanding that more comprehensive patch was really meant to have sort of a 10-year shelf life. And so if my numbers on that are all drawing up, I'm just wondering if that might be a possibility, because I think that the patching of individual potholes there has proven to be relatively ineffective. I know your team, Director Grenier, is out there constantly filling and refilling, and I just think about, the labor and effort that goes into that. And so if the state would have the ability again to fund, I'd even say locally, if we have the ability to fund something that's a better, like an 8-year solution, I guess, as opposed to every snowfall solution. Your thoughts, Director Grenier?
North Broadway has become the no good deed goes unpunished of my department. I did not want to do what I did out there. That we literally had no choice. That road, while DeGroat was doing the work to repair the joints on the MSD interceptor line, that thing fell apart. It literally turned to gravel underneath the wheels of the cars. And as fast as we could patch the gravel, it was falling apart worse. I didn't have any choice whatsoever but to do what I did out there.
It reminds me of Shawano Avenue.
Believe it or not, Shawano is not that bad. But the minute we start picking at Shawano, if we start pulling that asphalt off, we're going to be in the same boat. And we're talking about, we're probably looking at a $3 million 8-year fix. Given the length of that, the width of it, and the amount of material we'd have to utilize. And at that point, you're better off not taking the DOT funding and going it yourself. And then we're talking, you know, I've got a feeling that this 8-year project, it's not going to wind up being a mill and resurface. I think it's going to be a more comprehensive reconstruct out there. Speaking with Water Utility today, their water main, 3 vintages, I believe they said 1929, 1930 something, and a 1950s vintage. So all the water main out there has to go. By the time we dig that much up, we haven't evaluated the sewer conditions yet. We may wind up with 2/3 to 3/4 of that road being impacted, which is what happened with VELP. VELP originally was supposed to be a resurface or a mill and overlay, and by the time we got done with the utility damage out there, the DOT consented and said, no, let's go ahead and reconstruct it. There's not going to be anything left. I've got a feeling that's where Shawano is headed, so I think we're going to get a good project out of it. Really, the only way to move that up is if we tell the DOT thanks, but no thanks. That is a connecting highway, and we get connecting highway money for that. And part of the connecting highway money that we get for the state aid on that is to do all maintenance. So that's very clear in the state municipal agreement for connecting highways. All maintenance activities are our responsibility. We can't go back to the state and say, please raid your secret stash. They're going to come back with the state municipal agreement and say, for the money you get every year, right here it says in the document, maintenance is yours. We've asked that question.
Well, given the condition of that road, I mean, how optimistic are you that we're able to properly maintain it for 8 more years?
We'll do what needs to be done. That's a street, and it's a major street in the city of Green Bay. We're not going to let it become totally impassable. We will continue to work on it. For maintenance activities, that has probably become priority number 1 with our department.
Okay.
It's and Steve, you know this, and Alder Johnson, everybody. It's sad if you come in from the west side, you know, off the highway or any of the suburbs, and you're going down Shawano and you want to get downtown. It's sad. It's a sad representation, really. Presentation of our city. You go by West High School and you got this road falling apart. And people ask you about it all the time, right, Brian? You know, when are we going to get this dang thing fixed? It's hard to explain it to them. Anyone else on the committee have a question? Alder Stoyer.
Thank you, Chair. You know, I know we've all talked about the time frame and the potholes and how to maintain it and how to all that, and then it's all fine and good. Director Grenier, isn't there a temporary fix where you could somehow regrade, or, you know, a lot of times when you resurface, you just you skim off the top portion and then you just regrind it and then do something. Is there a fairly inexpensive way to just go across some of these really bad areas and just lay something down temporarily that would hold up for 4, 6, 8 years until we could finally do our project? You know, you do the potholes constantly, and I know we only had like $200,000 in our budget at one time. I'm not sure what it is exactly now for potholes, but I think it seems like we're using a lot of that money just for Shawano and a few other major roads. I don't see why there's some way that we couldn't use some kind of a grinding machine, just kind of cut it down a couple of inches and then just resurface that area temporarily so that it could last 4, 6, 8 years. Just a thought. I don't know what you think on that.
There's only 1 3/4 inches of asphalt on top of the underlying concrete to start with. That was the DOT project back in 2005. If we peel that off, the act of doing the milling, we will lose the 1929 vintage concrete, and it will fall apart. We've looked at this in the past. The reason we haven't done the mill and overlay is because it's not going to work.
No, I just had to ask.
Director Grenier, do you need more funds to address Shawano as far as the patching or pothole filling? Do you have enough?
I have not heard anything to the contrary yet. I've not heard that we don't have enough money to patch it. Anticipating where you're going, if I do hear something, I'll definitely come back and ask.
We'll shake the money tree.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. If I do hear from my staff that Steve, we're losing money on Shawano, we need more, I will definitely come ask for it. I understand the priority here.
This road out of all others makes me sad.
Yep.
Alder Burnett.
Big picture, thank you, Dr. Grenier. I think it is good news in a way that we received notice from the state. They acknowledged it in their plan. It's obviously not anything near what we were hoping for, but if Director Grenier believes it's a positive move in a good direction, that's a good thing. So I would make a motion to receive and place on file so we move on.
All right, motion by Alder Burnett, second by Alderman Scannell to receive and place on file. Any other discussion on this? All right, thanks, Steve. I appreciate you doing all the work on this, and at least we are moving in a positive direction. Are those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And those potholes will be done by next week? Oh, no, okay. Okay. Next item. Number 8. Consideration with possible action on request by Department of Public Works to approve single source purchase from Xylem for stormwater pumps and control panel for the Museum Place Storm Lift Station, and approve the purchase of the pumps and control panel in the amount of $123,000, $123,750. There we go. Go ahead, Director.
And actually, I'm going to have, I see the purchasing manager, Calvin Winters, is on the line with us. So I'm going to turn this over to Cal to see if he's got anything to say first.
Oh.
Mr. Winters.
What's in the procurement?
Really?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, I just unmuted you.
Oh, yes.
Okay, great. So this is a request that Jim came to me on a pump system that you guys have standardized, so that it's the same pumps, the same parts, the same training for. So they came to me with this request to single source this for that reason, which with that reasoning being same parts, same training, same maintenance, I did approve this on this.
Okay. Questions from the committee?
One of the other
when
things
do we expect this. So go ahead, Director.
Okay. One of the other things about Xylem, Flight Products and Xylem being the local rep for them, they are located in Pewaukee, so delivery charges are minimized, and response on any maintenance activities that we need. We have the ability simply to pull the pump out, put it on a truck, and in an hour and a half to 2 hours have it at a reputable dealer or the factory authorized dealer for service, which has been an issue for us in the past. So that also does play into the reason why we are requesting to sole source this.
When is this being installed, Steve?
That's a this year project. This is for the lift station that's going in on Museum Place that will help to alleviate the flooding in the Antoinette area.
Sure, that's music to Brian's ears. Alderman Johnson. Is that also going to help? I know Antoinette, I know Shawano, usually by the fire station, that usually gets really flooded. Does that also help that?
Oh, boy. Offhand, I don't know if those are interconnected.
Okay, because they're like right by each other.
Right, but
Alder Gerlach. Alder Gerlach, yes, go ahead.
Just wondering if this financial outlay, $123,000, is already within the approved budget.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Alder. Any other questions from the committee, or I'll entertain a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alder Burnett, second by Alderman Scannell to approve. Discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 9, consideration with possible action on the report of the purchasing manager. A, purchase of dewatering hoses and pipes for a new pump purchased in April 2020. RFQ 3250 was issued for this and 3 responses were received. All responses received did not meet the stated specification as required for aluminum piping. A vendor who was able to meet specifications was sourced for a cost of $33,361. A no substitute request was submitted and approved by the Director of Public Works and the procurement manager. See attached. Steve or Mr. Martin?
I think either myself or Cal could handle this. As was indicated on the summary, we put a specification out, none of the specification. And what we're looking at here, this is the pipes, hoses, and fittings that go on our suction trucks. So it's imperative that they be the aluminum pipe because they need to be able to withstand the rigors of bouncing around on one of the sucker trucks and then being deployed down manholes. And aluminum as opposed to some other metal because of the lightweight nature of it. I mean, these guys are taking them off the truck and onto the, off of the rack on the truck and then deploying them on a very regular basis. They get used daily. What we had was some vendors who were trying to substitute other materials for what we asked for, and that simply, based on our experience in the field, that's not going to work for us. So we did approach Cal and asked that a no substitute inserted into the specification, and as a result, we wound up with only one vendor who was able to supply.
Any questions from the committee? What are your wishes?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Scannell, second by Burnett to approve. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. B, awarding Edison Park Pickleball Court Project base bid and alternate to Pawlowski Paving Corporation, West Ellis, Wisconsin. RFQ 3245 was issued through the purchasing department and 1 response was received. The department is recommending that the base bid and the alternate are awarded for the sum of $78,557.80. Director?
With any public construction over $25,000, that has to be let by public bid, and that has to be done through the Department of Public Works. For a number of different types of projects, what we found is the pool that purchasing department has, especially on these small or unique type contracts, they actually have a better selection of contractors than respond to our open bid requests. So we work cooperatively with the purchasing department to make those determinations, and where we determine that they have a better vendor selection, which will in turn result in a better product and lower cost to the city, we authorize them to put the contracts out. Now, they follow the exact same statutory requirements. There's no shortcutting or anything. We're simply using the purchasing department because they get a better vendor pool. Pickleball courts, it's kind of a specialized asphaltic paving, so there's really not a whole lot of guys who do it. I was a little surprised that we only had a single response, but Pawlowski is a contractor we successfully used in the past. And the cost, we did go back and review that with the Parks Department to make sure that the cost came in within their expectations and was part of their project, because we're putting this contract out on their behalf. So we are recommending award of the contract, even though there was only a single vendor.
Did it come in within budget? Did it come in within budget, Director?
That I would have to defer to Corey Mim. And it looks like I need to unmute Corey. Sorry about that, Corey.
That's okay. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah. Yes, we can.
Okay. So it did go a little over budget, and mainly it was because we had decided to include resurfacing, recolor coding the existing tennis courts, which are on the north end of the park. So on the north end, there's 2 existing tennis courts with Also 4 pickleball courts that are have temporary nets. So on the north end, you can use it for either tennis or pickleball. On the south end of the courts, there's 2 existing tennis courts, and those are being converted to 6 permanent pickleball courts. So when we decided that we should include the color coding also for the north end, it kind of increased the budget, but it really makes the most sense to, or the costs, I should say, of the project, but it really makes sense. It's time for that area of the courts to be resurfaced. And since we're going to have a contractor there mobilized anyway, we were able to find the additional funding, which was, let's see, about $18,000 over our original cost. But we were able to find it, so we do have the funding, and we would like to move ahead with just getting it all done at one time. And then in the future, when there's maintenance that needs to be done, we can recolor coat both sides at the same time. So that was kind of the reasoning for doing that.
Thank you, Corey. Where did that funding come from? Was it another project that maybe was under budget, or?
Yes, it was in kind of one of our pots of money where we've been kind of lumping some of our athletic fields and courts, into one pot, and some of those projects were under budget, so we did have that additional funding. We, as part of the project as a whole, in 2019, the city bonded $50,000, and then the Packerland pickleball players also donated $10,000 towards the project. So that's where the funding came from.
All right. Questions from the committee?
One more of a
Burnett.
Yeah, maybe it was a lack of, a better term, but I don't like to hear, that there's a pot of money that, to me, as a taxpayer, when a project comes under budget, then that should be, we shouldn't hold that for future projects. Maybe that's a policy discussion for a later time. I'm not going to parse it right now, but just something to keep in mind. Because when we come under bid on a project, if we don't have oversight on that, it could lead to some real, strange things in the future. Projects that are being done or funds being held over for future projects that defeat the whole purpose of an open budget discussion. So nothing other than that comment's needed, but just something that to keep in mind.
Thank you, Alder.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Alderman Scannell to approve.
Second.
I'm sorry, who had that second?
Burnett.
Burnett, second by Burnett. Under discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 1-0. Approved. Item C, request approval to purchase annual street maintenance consumables as needed for the 2020 season and for annual budgeted expenditures from 21 to 25 from the contracted vendors as noted below. All you, Director.
I'll start off, and Cal, feel free to interrupt me if I misspeak somewhere along the line.
Okay.
Back in March, then Alderman Nicholson asked us to, reminded me that he and I had a discussion relative to approaching Brown County Public Works to see if they could possibly be a vendor for our asphaltic materials, and we had not done that. So following that committee meeting, we did go back and approach Brown County. Brown County did indicate to us that for cold mixed asphalt, they don't produce that. They buy that commercially as well. So recommendation from purchasing department is still to go to either Northeast Asphalt or MCC at an anticipated cost of $118 a ton. And the 2020 budget includes up to $10,500 for the purchase of cold mixed asphalt. However, Brown County does produce hot mix asphalt. We had originally quoted Northeast Asphalt at between $56.25 and $58.75, depending on the type of mix we needed per ton from Northeast Asphalt. Brown County has agreed to supply those same two mixes to us, or as close as possible. We won't notice a difference. Let's put it that way. There's some minor formulation differences, but from a performance standpoint, they're interchangeable with the two mixes that Northeast Asphalt had quoted us on. And Brown County will supply that to us at $49.50 a ton. So the total budget estimate is $91,200. The total expenditure remains the same. It's just we'll be able to get more asphalt going with Brown County.
We know where to use it. Shawano Avenue. Any questions from the committee? Motion by Alderman Scannell. Second by Burnett. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 10, consideration with possible action on the review and award of the following contracts. A, resurfacing 120. B, sewers 320, mini sewers. Any issue with any of these, Director?
No, the bid summary for the mini sewer was included in the packet, but we only opened the contracts for the resurfacing yesterday. So just very briefly, you can see before you the bids that were received. We had 3 contractors bid on the Part B, which is the concrete portion, so curb and gutter repairs, things of that nature. And then 2 contractors bid on the asphalt, MCC and Northeast Asphalt. Low responsive responsible bidders, Fisher Ullman Construction for Part A in the amount of $448,537.50. And MCC Incorporated was the low responsive responsible bidder for the Part B at a bid or a contract amount of $1,361,814.67. Staff does recommend awarding those contracts to those vendors in the amounts identified, and we will have that bid summary in the packet that goes forward to council.
All right.
Motion to
Can
approve.
we take these together? Steve?
You can, yes.
All right. Thank you. Did I hear
Motion to
approval?
approve.
All right. Motion by Scannell. Second by Alder Gerlach at the second. Any discussion?
The lowest responsive bidder for both projects. So one did one, the other did the other.
Correct. The way that the item will read in the minutes, what you approved was the award of the contract sewers 3-20 mini sewers to DeGroat Incorporated in the amount of $324,752.50, and then the resurfacing contract Part A and Part B with the contractor and numbers that I had read off to you.
All right. Any other questions? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 11, report of actions taken by the Department of Public Works. A, granting of licenses, sidewalk builder, Brian's Quality Concrete, Carter Trucking and Excavating, Jim Fisher Incorporated, KPC Concrete Contractor LLC, Locke Construction Company Incorporated, and Melnaric Concrete Incorporated. 2 is tree and brush trimmer license to Bay Valley Tree Service. And 3 is underground sprinkler system to Wolf Raths Landscaping LLC.
So,
Director, it looks like those are already all granted.
Yes, the committee did grant us the authority while the pandemic is going on to handle those license issuances at a staff level. So we're reporting off. All of these contractors have worked for us before. Again, this is more or less procedural, but we do want to make sure that we keep you folks in the loop on this.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Motion by Alder Scannell to receive and place on file.
Second.
Second by Alder Gerlach. Discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Informational Director's Report.
Director's report will be painfully brief tonight. I'm heading back into the field as soon as we get done here. I've been out since about 9 o'clock this morning dealing with flooding issues across the city. Strong northeast winds came in ahead of a storm front. We didn't get a whole lot of rain, but those winds coming in, gusting up to 52 at times. We had waves that were hitting the dike out along East Shore Drive, crashing 10 to 12 feet up in the air, and then the remainder of the wave coming right over the top of the dike. Almost 30 years I've lived in Green Bay. I've never seen the type of flooding we saw today. We literally had a river flowing alongside of, well, Alder Lefebvre's house was in the middle of a lake, and there was a river flowing across East Shore Drive into the wildlife sanctuary. It's crazy. I saw places in Green Bay, the north end of Ashland Avenue up by Fort Howard Park was underwater. I've never seen water there before. We had a river flowing across North Broadway at Prairie because the Fox River blew its banks out. We had 4-foot whitecaps coming backwards up the Fox River. I don't know if the two remaining docks we have at Metro, I don't know that we even have them anymore. They were getting banged around at 9 o'clock this morning, and we didn't feel safe trying to get them out of the water to try to rescue them. This was just absolutely nuts. Things do look like they've stabilized at about 4 o'clock this afternoon. It looks like the winds are starting to shift out of the north as opposed to northeast, and they're dropping in intensity. Steady blow at 20 to 25 knots with gusts up to 35. So that's a far sight better than 35 steady with gusts to 52 that we had earlier today. But if you're so inclined, please send good thoughts and prayers to those who have been impacted by this. This is much worse. It's a combination of the March 2019 East River flood and the December 2019 Bay flood all on the same day.
Thank you, Director.
What
questions?
Weary, one question for Director Grenier. Yard waste for the, doing the yard waste and advertising that on social media, that's helpful. One person had a question. Nicolay, when's the last date that you think along Nicolay they have to get yard waste? Because I think the pickup's the 11th. What would you recommend I tell him? I told him
it's underwater now.
That's true. Well, it's former Alder Wisbiski's property, if that gives you reference.
Okay. I would suggest that he continue to monitor social media or contact the operations division directly. We are keeping up with that on a daily basis. And, I've had some folks ask me, when are you getting to my street? And I keep telling them, watch the social media. And that's how they're responding to me. They're actually asking me the question through Facebook. So I know they're reading the post. And what I've told them is, okay, if we say today on Wednesday that we're in Monday routes on the east side and your garbage, that means we're picking yard waste 2 days behind your garbage day, and your normal garbage day is Friday, expect us to be there on Wednesday. So that's kind of how it works. My recommendation, that's why I asked operations manager Pierlot to start posting that daily, was to get that information off to the residents every day so that they can monitor that.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Any other questions for the director? All right.
Thanks for the good work. Motion to receive and place on file.
Second.
Motion by Scannell, second by Burnett to receive and place on file. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Our next meeting is scheduled for May 13th, and I think we'll just keep it up as we always do. We'll follow parks, and hopefully we can keep it on this Wednesday rotation so everybody knows when it is, where it is.
My only request is that we make just a little more gap in between.
Oh, right.
I don't remember our meeting
Fair enough.
For INS. This was a long one.
Yes.
Yeah. We had to break in Lynn.
Yeah.
Lynn, our meetings are always this long. Oh, man. No, they're not. They're not. Jesse talks too much.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Burnett. Those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Mike.
We're adjourned.
Thank you all.